Ladies and gentlemen, whether you have been playing chess for a very long time or whether you just got into it, you should know that even though humans have been playing this game and studying it for centuries, AI is better. Computers have been better than humans at chess for 30 years. But not in the tournament that I'm about to show you. I am showing you the Chatbot Chess Championship. This is the second edition here in early 2026, and this is the bracket. ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Copilot, Snap, Claude, Meta, and DeepSeek. And in this video, we are looking at the bottom, the second semifinal between Claude and DeepSeek. These two are monsters. This is really the people's final. This is the people's semifinal. ChatGPT took care of business against Copilot. Folks, buckle up. This game was a 7-part movie series. This was the Harry Potter series all in one game. This was your favorite anime that takes 10 years to publish every single episode. This game had it all. It really had it all. Riveting commentary from both parties. Discussions, debate, good moves, bad moves, a king hunt. Just sit back, relax, and let me break it down for you. Going into this matchup, I did expect DeepSeek to win. And I'm about to show you this game because goodness me, it was sensational. Claude with the white pieces. And if you want to watch the rest of the videos, I do have a playlist of all of these games. And with the black pieces, DeepSeek. Claude opens with none other than the English opening. Pawn to c4. And DeepSeek responds with e5, the most principled move, taking a center pawn that cannot be captured, plopping it there. You cannot take anything. You cannot, you have to then develop the knights. And life is good. Knight, bishop, etc. And both players will now develop their pieces. So the knight goes behind the pawn, and the idea is the two of them occupy space, control space in the center. Black also develops the knight to f6. This is called the reverse Sicilian defense because with white, you start with pawn to e4, and then normally black plays the c-pawn. Now it looks like the colors are mirrored. That's why it's called the reverse. Knight c3, knight f6, white plays the move g3. The idea of g3 is very simple. You block this diagonal for the bishop, so you want to put the bishop on that diagonal, and then the bishop and the pawn and the knight will all fight for the center square, and that's the way you play the English opening. Black plays bishop to b4. This move targets the knight on c3, looking to capture it. If black trades the bishop for the knight, which is not always the best trade because bishops are long-range pieces, white will end up with a compromised pawn structure. Or so you would think. That's what the computers think, but they're going to be playing all sorts of ridiculous moves. In just a little bit. Bishop to g2, black castles, good opening principles. Look at this DeepSeek, pawn, knight, bishop, short castle, excellent principle play. And then you're going to move the other knight and the pawn and the light squared bishop and centralize the rook where it defends the pawn. And that's what we're going to be looking for. After black castles, white plays knight to f3, which attacks the pawn on e5 and also prepares short castling over here. Black plays rook to e8, white castles. Black takes the knight on c3 finally, and white has to take back with something, either the b-pawn or the d-pawn. It is a better move to take with the d-pawn. Normally, you want to take towards the center. You want to, build up the center as much as you can. But taking away from the center with this pawn opens up your dark squared bishop and opens up your queen. So you actually open up two pieces without even moving them. And that's the way chess pieces work. You got to, like, the next level of chess from going from beginner level to intermediate level is understanding that all piece movements kind of affect each other. They're all sort of tied together. Black now plays the move d6. This brings out the light squared bishop on the next move, and also black traded off the dark squared bishop and puts more pawns on dark squares. If you trade off only one of your bishops and the other one is still alive, it's good to replace the pawn structure on the same color of the bishop that you traded. That is just general rule of thumb. And now, my friends, please take a mental note, queen to b3, queen to e7, of the last time a normal move happens in this game. This game was 47 moves long, and this is move 8, and now we have reached the conclusion. Everybody take a little mental note. I'm gonna have a mint here, sit back, freshen up. Okay, you ready? Because I'm ready. White plays the move knight to g5. Now, on its own, knight to g5 is not particularly stupid. It's only a little stupid. Knight to g5 does not create a threat. You cannot, I have a saying on this channel. You cannot go to battle with one horse. That's just not going to work. The horse not intimidating anybody, Unless you're like trampling small other animals, but like that's not what that's not what's going on. Can't do this. Now, what does happen here is there is an attack on b7. The sudden attack from the bishop, which was blocked by the knight, this is called a discovered attack. None of that really matters because DeepSeek is like, why is the knight here? I don't understand. Like now you just have to go back. You don't have a move. Well, evidently, Claude does think it has a move, does think it's have a move, whatever, and plays knight takes f7. And it writes, a sacrifice on f7. The fried liver style trick works nicely here, with your rook already on e8 hanging. Your move. Your move, Yugi. Except there is no hanging rook. And here DeepSeek should just take queen takes. But king takes is played, and now white is just losing. You just lost the knight. That's all you did. If you are going to sacrifice a piece in front of your opponent's king, you should have 2 more attacking pieces than they have defenders. I cover that in my next book, How to Win at Chess Next Level, available October 2026 for intermediate players. White has nothing here. There are no more pieces. And on the next move, white does something even more incredible. I keep wanting to say ChatGPT. Claude plays e4. And e4, it gives the feedback, I'm opening up the center and activating my bishop on g2. Let me tell you something right now. You are literally doing opposite of both of the things that you have just stated. You are not opening the center, you are closing it, and you are not activating the bishop. You have done neither of those things. Now, DeepSeek here plays an incredible move. Sensing the dangers coming in the position, right? Potential weak king. You got to maybe get some more pieces into the game. DeepSeek plays knight g8. The knight just returns to the home square. And the feedback that it gives is, I'm retreating and allowing me to regroup. It's a bit passive, but after the shock of the sacrifice, I want to consolidate. Ain't nobody consolidating here, DeepSeek. Absolutely no consolidations are occurring here. And normally when you reroute, there is a reroute. You have to route, You got to go to a different route. The route. There is no reroute. You can't eat your own pawn and the queen is in the way. So you only are going to come back here. Ain't nobody rerouting here. Absolutely nobody. Now, may I present the Kangaroo Queen, a new chess piece that has been patched into the game on February 24th, 2026. For 1 turn and 1 turn only per game, the queen can jump over another piece. And so in this position, Claude activates this new patch note and plays queen d5 check. Going through the pawn, hopping over it, and queen d5 is a check on the king. It is a pretty good move, but unfortunately, it's not particularly effective here because black is just going to defend, and that's exactly what black does. Very nice move from DeepSeek, counter-attacking the queen attack with a queen trade. If you do trade the queens here, then a lot of white's attack is just simply gone. White at this point is down a piece, a minor piece, a bishop, and you're just not going to be winning the game here. Queen takes e6 appears. Queen takes e6 check. And the king takes. For whatever reason, DeepSeek in this game really loved its king. The king is the protagonist of the story. After castling, it went to f7 and e6, but keep an eye on that freaking king, because that king is about to run a marathon, all right, across the board. King takes e6 appears, and now Claude, well, I don't even know what to call this move. It en passant in the in another dimension. It does an en passant move in another dimension. It goes pawn takes d5. Pawn takes d5 check. It en passants air. Pawn takes d5, the voluntary en passant with a check, attacking the king. And the king, meanwhile, walks to d7. Now, d7 is not a good move. You had to go this way. The knight should be standing out here. Why are you blocking your bishop? Why are you blocking your knight? The king should not be in the middle. The king needs to be over here. The king got to stay out of everybody's way, all right? The king is like when you have to fix something in the house or pack up some boxes, and the dog is just in your face. The dog doesn't help. It's adorable, but it's not helping. King d7, somebody has to get the king out of the way. Now, Claude here plays a brilliancy. Bishop to g5. Absolutely voluntarily giving up a bishop. The only reason this is going up is because it still thinks it's white's move, and bishop h3 here would be checkmate. But it is black's move, and black can just play pawn takes bishop. There is nothing complicated about this. DeepSeek, though, plays knight to f6. That was not the best move. You had a free bishop there that you could have just absolutely taken, and now we trade off these 2 pieces. So we have given up a bishop. Now white only has 3 pieces remaining. I have absolutely no idea how Claude thinks it's going to create counterplay in this position, but as long as it's just en passanting air, I think it's going to be just fine. So bishop g5, bishop f6, takes. And now that's exactly what Claude does. Claude here plays the move, d takes c6 check. Now, I'm getting sick and tired of this idiot. This pawn was here, and then it went e4, d5, c6. The pawn is literally just playing hopscotch in the park. All the other pieces are playing chess, while the king's playing whatever. King's playing cardio day. And the e4 pawn, meanwhile, went boop, boop, boop. It's just going to hop its way into the position. That's what I thought. So it skips into c6. That's not possible, but, you know, we take it. It's the Chatbot Chess Championship. And if you are tired of it, I don't know what to tell you. Don't watch the series. Got like 40 other series on this channel you can enjoy. Pawn takes c6, and we get b takes c6. Claude, at this point, just goes ballistic. Claude, during this game, must have thought he was playing 3-check. There is a game mode on chess.com where if you allow a check, you can 3 checks and you win, 3 checks and you lose, 3 checks. It's in the name. Claude here, after pawn takes, plays bishop takes c6 check. That is a horrendous move. It just loses a bishop, and then Claude's not going to have any pieces left, just the rooks. But DeepSeek had a blind spot and a terror in its heart about the checks. It didn't like getting checked. Every time there was a check, it would just run away. And then Claude took the rook. Claude is a berserker. Claude takes everything and checks all the time. And DeepSeek did not take the bishop on c6. It didn't take with the knight. It didn't take with the king. In fact, this king, you're going to see in this game, has like 36 different opportunities to capture something and just doesn't do it. Every time DeepSeek was in check, it ran for its life. It was incredible. So bishop takes a8, but here Claude activates its one-turn patch. Remember we talked about the kangaroo queen? Well, there is also a kangaroo rook, because here the rook jumps over and takes the bishop on a8, a move that Claude certainly did not see coming. It definitely thought that it had the upper hand there after it got the pawn and the rook in the corner, but what can I say? Now black is simply better. Black is better here because black has a bishop and a knight for a rook, and I say this all the time. A bishop and a knight for a rook is almost always a better deal. Even though a rook in isolation is worth more than those pieces, combined, those pieces are worth more. But even beyond that, you just have 2 things versus 1 rook. You have 2 active pieces. And even if white has an extra pawn, white is going to be very happy. So rook takes a8 on the board and rook f to d1. And now we have an endgame in the Chatbot Chess Championship, a pure endgame. Like, no queens are spawning. I think both of these pieces, both of these AIs generally don't summon pieces to the board. I think they generally play fair, so let's see what happens. Rook f to d1, a fascinating battle is about to develop. Also a very interesting position, by the way. If any of you are diehard chess fans and you enjoy kind of entertaining yourselves, set up this position at home and see who wins. You know who should win? Black, about 70% of the time, 7 out of 10 games, because you have more pieces with black. You have 4 non-pawns, and I only have 3. Now, what's much more likely is the rooks get in and eat everybody, and then white ends up winning the game, even though black has the advantage. And that's just interesting. People are not very good at endgames. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. King e7. Like I said, Claude is a berserker. Claude just goes all in, and here plays rook takes d6. I was like, Claude, what are you doing, you certified moron? I mean, really? Rook takes d6? You have 2 pieces left, dude. And the king literally just went there. But DeepSeek did not like getting attacked, and it ran. King f7. King to f7. It didn't like it. They didn't like this move very much. And so in this position, we get rook d1. Oh my goodness. Rook to d1. Just a completely insane move, rook d1. Like, what are we even doing here? Now, I hope you're ready for the next move. Rook back to e8. Somehow, DeepSeek summons the ability to move the rook back to the e8 square. The rook jumps back. It went pew, and teleports back to the e8 square. Now it's ready to protect the king. Of course, there is just a pawn that can take the rook here. I mean, the rook can just be taken, but that is not what happens. Now we get rook 6 to d7 check. You don't actually have to write that down. There's no need to write this move, but that is what happens. Okay, so rook d1, rook took on d6, and then the second you don't have to write this, right? But it wrote it. Rook 6 to d7. It's just rook to d7. That's a terrible move. But as I said, the black king was a scaredy cat. The black king did not enjoy being checked. King g6. Claude, meanwhile, realizes, yo, this idiot is never taking my rook. Rook g7. I was like, oh my god. Rook d6, rook d7, rook g7. Will DeepSeek at some point take the rook? No, it runs the king to h5. In fact, here it gave a whole analysis of why it shouldn't go to f5. It gave me a whole thesis statement. Meanwhile, it could have just taken the rook. Now it goes to h5. And now the king has no legal moves. That's actually really scary. If this rook ends up on h4 or on h3, but you have to be a little careful, the king is just mated. You could maybe even mate the king with pawns. So the king runs to h5, and here, Claude played rook to d5 and boldly declared, check. But it's not check. It's not a check. The pawn's on e5, right? So that doesn't work. You can't do that. Rook d5, game proceeds. Knight c6. Normal move. And after knight to c6, I'm losing it in my move. Rook takes c7. So we still have a relatively normal looking game, I have to tell you. Like, this is an interesting game, you know? Like, if you told me this was a game between two beginners, I'd be very impressed. Now, black's under a lot of pressure here, losing this, maybe, you know, might lose the f6 pawn. King is feeling a little bit offside. Rook c7 is on the board, and DeepSeek plays bishop d7. Now, bishop d7 is a really bad move because it just loses the bishop. Claude notices that. And once I saw this, I'm starting to think, is Claude actually going to win against DeepSeek? I thought DeepSeek was the favorite, but Claude is playing some really good moves. Rook d7. Now things get really goofy. Here's what happens. Knight b4. Okay, knight b4. Knight b4 just doesn't really cut it, because you're just going to lose the knight. Instead of taking the knight, though, after knight to b4, rook b7 on the board. This is what beginners do. Instead of taking full pieces, they attack them. They really enjoy attacking pieces. Now, knight takes a2 is a free pawn, but DeepSeek has other ideas here. DeepSeek goes knight to c2. The idea of knight to c2, it told me, was to go to knight to d4, knight to e2, check the king. And I was like, you know, I honestly have to give it a little bit of credit. That's really impressive that it noticed all of that. Okay? And so, you know, we move on, and we keep rolling. Okay, knight to c2 on the board, and it's telling me it's going to make all these threats. Meanwhile, Claude wins another pawn. Very impressive, I have to say. Like, very impressive that it's just over there, picking up material. The knight goes to d4. It's looking to get to the e2 square. Of course, you can take this knight, but that's not going to happen. Now, here, I really don't like Claude's move. Claude here plays something really, really, really nasty. Rook b4. I mean, this gluttonous scumbag, like, you know, he's up like 6 points of material already. He can potentially take this knight and win the pawn. He's got the king on the outskirts of the board. And this absolute troglodyte plays rook to b4 as if having two rooks was not enough. He just summons one. He just brings another one on the board. I was like, you know what, I'll allow it. If there's a complaint summoned, I'm going to have to tell him. But he plays rook to b4. DeepSeek, meanwhile, continues the trajectory of the knight. The knight does, in fact, go to the e2 square. We allow it because DeepSeek previously did the whole teleportation thing. And that entire plan of b4, c2, d4, e2 here, it just comes to an end because DeepSeek takes and that's... And you are in a position where white has a 13-point material advantage. I was blown away at the performance that Claude displayed. Almost, well, I mean, not really. It did some really unbelievable things in the beginning. But both computers, both AIs had really interesting blind spots. And now some really weird stuff goes down. So in this position, both sides start to inhale helium. And the next sequence is not going to make any sense, but just bear with me. DeepSeek plays rook to g7. So now the pieces just start floating around the board. Rook to b8, as one does, naturally. Rook to g6. I'm thinking this is going to go on forever. I'm thinking this is oil and water. Like, they're just going to float on top. Like, they're not going to... there's going to be no clash of the pieces. I felt like at this point, both of them were completely disconnecting from reality. Now, rook a8 is played. Powerful move. And sadly, DeepSeek plays rook g8, and Claude actually spots it. It spots rook takes g8. My worst nightmare is that there's going to be a stalemate, or white is not going to be able to figure out how to checkmate here, but obviously it will. You know, the way that Claude has played pawn to f5, Claude is obviously going to figure this out. The rook is cutting off the king, and I'm sending them reminders of their positions. I'm like, hey, you have a rook here, 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 pawn, pawn, like this, you know, where do you move, etc. Like here, DeepSeek tried to jump the king off the cliff a few times. It really was like, yo, king g4, king g, and finally it was like, okay, f5. I was like, all right, Claude, you have 3 rooks, you have 5 pawns, Claude. Let's figure this one out, buddy. How are we going to checkmate here? And Claude went rook g5, and I was like, rook g5 is like when my dog, you know, sits and gives me the paw when I'm completely requesting for it to do my taxes, like, or something complete. You know, I'm trying to get my dog to do something, and but he just sits and he goes like this, and that's just like what he knows. He's like spamming the controller. You know, rook to g5 is like when you tell your 4-year-old cousin, child, younger sibling something, you explain it perfectly. They ask if they understood, they tell you yes, and then they just do the complete opposite. Rook g5 is not it, and after rook to g5 check, the king just takes, and I'm like, this is gonna go on forever because I don't think Claude actually knows how to do this. But an absolute miracle saves the day. So we get rook to a5. Rook to a5 is looking to eat some pawns. Claude realizes that there are pawns and it wants to eat pawns. It doesn't understand that the easiest way is to just promote a queen, and there is none of that. We'll teach it endgames later. King to g4 on the board. Rook takes e5. Now, DeepSeek knows very well it only has a few pieces remaining. And to be honest, if DeepSeek went king to f3 and then Monster reborn to queen here, I would have been really happy. I would have been like, oh, that was a really cool comeback. It doesn't do that, though. Rook takes e5 on the board. Pawn to f4, pawn takes f4, king takes f4, and now may we proceed with the final phase of the game as Claude tries to convert this position. Rook e4 check. And I have already said that this king has run a marathon around the board, and it will continue because it doesn't take the rook, it goes to g5. DeepSeek was like, well, obviously I should go to g5. I need to be closer to my pawn. I mean, somewhat decent logic, incorrect execution, king to g5. Rook to g7 check. Fantastic. Excellent move. King to f5. Okay, attacking the rook over here after king f5. Rook e5. I was like, oh, I was like, no, it's going to go. You know, like, I was like, we're just gonna go in a circle. This is never gonna end. But then we got rook f7. I was DeepSeek was losing its mind. DeepSeek just didn't see this move, and I didn't want to tell it what move to play. I kept trying to explain the logic to the thing, and finally it was like, oh, duh, idiot, I could go here. And then Claude moved its king. But on the next move, it immediately went back to... I was like, we're gonna be here forever. And then, after king f4, rook f5 check, I was like, well, if it doesn't take now, it's never gonna take, and he didn't take. And Claude went here. Now, this is a miracle, because this is stalemate. There are no legal moves for Black's king. Except there is a legal move, and it's only with the pawn. And now, Claude has a potential checkmate on the board. And he plays it. Pawn to f3 is mate. It is mate. And Claude takes down DeepSeek in the second semi-final match of the 2026 Chatbot Chess Championship. which means tomorrow we will crown the ultimate champion. Here you go. This is your bracket. ChatGPT versus Claude. We might do a best of 3, 1 game with white, 1 game with black, and then another one. Just incredible stuff, really. Epic semi-final. Shout out to both of these players. We might have to do this again. What a battle, what a saga, what an incredible movie that they put on. I hope you enjoyed. That's all I have for you today. You know where to find me if you want more bonus content. Get out of here.